People who enter other people's homes as a part of your job, maintenance workers, etc. What's the weirdest thing you've seen inside someone's home? I was on a ride along with the fire department. We responded to smell of smoke in an apartment building. We found the apartment fast enough because the fire alarm was going off inside. We walk in to find this guy naked as the day he was born, passed out on the floor in front of the TV with porn on way louder than it should be and the remnants of a pizza in the oven. Edit, thanks for the silver guys. Okay, to answer some questions. The gentleman I questioned was very drunk. There were beer cans all over the kitchen and a bottle of liquor on the floor next to him. To wake him up we actually all left, and the fire chief woke him in his daily uniform, so he didn't think he was being abducted. Lastly, this was in Fargo, North Dakota about 14 years ago. So, this isn't weird, but it was the most shocking. I was working with adults with intellectual disabilities that lived in residential homes. It was one of my first weeks in the job and a coworker was taking me out to a home to show me what she did when she did home reviews. We get to the house, open the door, and we are instantly hit with a wall of air smelling like feces. 2 steps in and it was apparent, there was diarrhea on a chair, on the carpet and random splotches all over. The whole house was in shambles. The fridge was full of moldy foods, and I'll never forget picking up the shredded cheese, shaking the bag, and seeing green mold flakes go up and down. Food was splattered all over the cabinets, the beds were stained with urine and feces, and expired canned food was found everywhere. The staff there had been neglecting those guys for a long time and no one had bothered to check up on them. I used to work for a concrete company, and our mixer trucks would sometimes damage property. Typically, my partner and I did maintenance on the plants, but we'd get sent to job sites to unfuck whatever the drivers did. So, while at one house, we had to tear up the driveway, replace the culvert and re-pour the end of the driveway. The first day we were there, all the old Snoopy neighbors were standing around watching us, and I had to piss pretty bad. So, I asked the homeowner if I could use his bathroom. He said sure, and led me through his house, past a bathroom, into the bathroom in the master bedroom. Already creeped out by that. Oh, also I noticed cameras all over the place. Some pointed out windows, some pointed into the rooms. Creep factor leveled up. So, he leads me to the bathroom, opens the door and holds it for me, like you would at a store, when someone is behind you. I say thanks, he still stands there. I had to walk past him and yank the door closed. While leaving, I notice a bedroom decked out in kid stuff. This would normally not toss up any flags. Grandkids' room probably, right? But with all the added creepiness, it just didn't seem normal at all. Told my partner, he laughed and pointed out there was probably cameras in the bathroom. If either of us had to piss after that, we drove down to the gas station. Edit time for clarification. So, this was around 15 years ago. We are talking camcorders on tripods, not your cutesy nanny cams. Old guy was single, and this wasn't a very kid-friendly setup as far as foster homes go. The part about him holding the door for the bathroom, imagine going to a restaurant and there's a group of people with you and you hold the door open for them. This was what I was talking about. Except he didn't seem to have any intentions on closing it, hence me snatching it from him. Cleaning a huge condo for a wealthy book publisher, the owner felt that cats were sacred, so they had suspended walkways through the entire 6K square FT condo for the 2 cats to walk on, so they could move through every room without having to touch the floor. Additionally, every 12 feet or so in each room, they had a cat balcony the cats could sit on made out of real crystal. We weren't allowed to touch them as they were valued at $10,000 apiece. Service plumber here. At the house of an elderly lady, at least 75 years old, and there's naked pictures of her on all the walls and several dildos all about. It was interesting. I do construction sales, so I'm in homes a lot. For me, it's the sheer number of preppers that exist today. Walk into a suburban America basement and bam, 24 buckets full of survival food. Or ammo stuffed into every alcove and rafter. It's definitely not just the ones you expect. Back in the early 90s, I worked for a company that removed old electric water heaters and replaced them with propane-powered water heaters. Because propane water heaters can possibly spew carbon monoxide, there are state regulations as to where the water heaters can and can't be placed, so it was my job to inspect the water heater room and draw up plans for ventilation, if necessary. I showed up at a client's home to inspect the area where he had his water heater to see if we needed to install any vents. When I asked to see his current water heater, he seemed a little uncomfortable and said, "I have something in the room that I forgot to clean up." I followed him to the room, and when he opened the door, the smell of weed hit me. In the water heater room, he had fishing lines strung up with trimmed plants being dried. If I were to guess, there must have been a couple pounds of weed drying in there. He said, "Oops, sorry about that." I smiled and told him, "No problem. I don't even know what that is." I knew exactly what it was, but I didn't want the guy to get worried about me telling someone. He offered me some, but I told him, "No thanks. I don't know what that is." As I was leaving, he asked me, "You aren't going to tell anyone about the plants, are you?" I asked, "What plants?" The guy smiled, then said, "You sure you don't want some?" I definitely wanted some, but I was still pretty new at my job, so I didn't want to take the chance that accepting weed from him would blow up in my face. Before I left, I told him, "Make sure you clear that closet before our guys arrive. They might not be happy about the plants I didn't see." As a maintenance guy at a large apartment complex, I've seen some shit, naked people, really gross people, but thank God no dead people. I remember doing an emergency water repair and had to go into an occupied unit. It was the strangest thing. It was pretty much empty, dirty but empty, like no one lives there, no furniture, not even a bed, just a shitty mattress on the floor, and some clothes scattered around, and at least 30 pairs of Nike shoes, all sorts of weird colors, like this guy had no TV or couch but had a collection of expensive shoes, all the same size from what I could tell. IDK, it wasn't as bad as a few hoarder units we had. Worked as a furniture delivery guy for a rent-to-own place in Iowa for a couple of years, and I saw some absolutely crazy shit. We were delivering a couch to someone, and when we arrived there was no answer to our knocking. We called our manager back at the store and explained that no one was home. He tells us to hang out for a minute while he tries getting in touch with the customer. While we're waiting, we start hearing this weird sort of screeching sound coming from a detached garage. We decided to investigate the noise. We turned the corner to the front of the garage and came face to face with the meanest, scariest looking monkey I've ever seen. It was in the garage, but they had like this wire fence keeping it inside. The entire garage was its cage. In the middle of BFE. I have no idea what type of monkey it was. It was large and very angry. I do odd jobs on the side. Often, I help older people move. Recently we were moving a large dresser that the owner, an older gentleman, didn't bother to clean out or tape up. His VHS porno collection came falling out. Who the hell keeps VHS porno these days? We know for a fact he had internet. Checking fire alarms, testing emergency bedside buttons in a nursing home that are like individual little apartments, opened the door to stench of death, and sure enough, lady dead on the bed, been there about 2 days. So, I wasn't expecting so many responses, but to answer some questions. Yes, the bedside button worked fine. No, nobody was in trouble for her not being found for 2 days. This specific place is very independent. They have their own cars and are free to come and go as they please, and the only time someone comes by is for any sort of maintenance or if they have visitors stop by. I worked as a delivery driver for a Deliver Anything company in the early 2000s. At the time it was a very novel, but ultimately unsustainable, idea for a business back then. We had a lot of regular weirdos. One night one of these weirdos ordered about $30 worth of candles from the dollar store. This job really brought to the forefront the disconnects that exist in us as consumers. So of course, initially I had gotten the wrong kind of candles for the weirdo. He showed me what he wanted at his apartment door. Luckily the store was literally a couple blocks away, so I didn't have to waste much time because I wasn't being paid hourly. "Come in," was what I was greeted with when I returned, which is never something I'm particularly happy about as a delivery person. I see what my rational brain tells me as a pile of laundry on a coffee table in front of a filthy couch. But it's not that. It's a 3-foot-tall wax pile. I had bought candles in jars the first time, and I could definitely see why those would not work for our gentleman. He needed freestanding candles, so he could just plop one down and light it to continue building his wax mountain, which was starting to spill onto the floor. A less weird but more awkward experience I had with this man was him literally falling asleep mid-signature for his Burger King. I used to install smoke alarms for the hearing impaired, 50% elderly and 50% deaf, all over the state of Oklahoma. I would get addresses for the installations the week before and plan routes accordingly, meaning I would just put the addresses into Google and check out the Earth map views. This place I'm thinking of was in the middle of nowhere, which is saying something considering that the entire state of Oklahoma is in the middle of nowhere. When my ASL interpreter and I made the trip, we had to ramp our minivan over a nearly washed-out bridge, bounce down a forest road, and choose which of 3 broken-down trailers these people were using as shelter. Looking back, we really should have just called it before ramping the bridge. Once there, we met the people and they explained, in ASL through my interpreter, that they had a tornado rip through their home that ended up sparking a fire somehow. That explanation never made it through translation. Since then they had decided to be more fire safety conscious, which I applaud, but their home had holes in the roof the size of people. One wall was just a tapestry of duct-taped trash bags. I didn't feel right just installing fancy smoke alarms when they clearly needed much more help, but there wasn't anything I could do. So I'm doing the only thing I can do, installing smoke alarms, explaining basic fire safety, teaching them to use their bed-shaking devices. These folks were deaf, and when I start to explain that they should exit the home without stopping to grab anything including pets, they stopped me and explained that their pet is very valuable. As in it had a monetary value. I'm not one to pry, so I took this at face value and reiterated the importance of leaving the home immediately if it is on fire, especially because it's a trailer home. They had a long, silent conversation with my interpreter during which she looked more and more concerned. The occupants go into a room I hadn't yet entered and emerge with a fucking bald eagle on a leash. Shit's illegal, yo.